to the convention, and welcome to our four special guests, Giang, Dinh, Tomoko Fuse, Paul Jackson, and Robert Lang. This session is a chance for us to get to know them, learn more about their origami and what inspires them. The format of the session will involve each of the guests answering a series of questions, hopefully give us an insight into their origami styles and ideas. At the end, we'll open up for questions, which I've just told you, so let's save them to the end. So firstly, Giang Dinh. Giang, welcome. So Giang Dinh is considered to be one of the leading origami artists in the world today. He emphasizes a less is more style, and his work aims to capture emotion in paper with the fewest possible folds. Breaking away from complexity, his origami work is infused with beauty, softness, and subtlety. Born in Vietnam, he now lives in Virginia, USA, works as an architect. Giang, perhaps you could tell us a bit about yourself and what led you to an interest in origami.
Sure. I guess, first of all, I would like to say that I think you were overpraised. Anyway, when I was in like second or third grade, my parents bought me origami books. I think it's a Honda books. And after the war ended in 1975, when I was only like 9 years old, we lost everything. So I only remember a couple of traditional models, and not until I came to the U.S. in the end of 1990 and graduated from university in 1993. So in 1996, I went to a bookstore and I saw the origami book that my parents bought me like 20-something years ago, because the image of the model is still very clearly in my mind. So I bought those books and I started folding again in 1996. So in 1998, I got started to create my own model. So
thank you, Giang.
Yeah.
And so, Tomoko Fuse, welcome.
Okay.
Tomoko is one of the world's leading origami artists, written more than 100 books in the last 30 years, describing ingenious boxes, geometric forms, and other great ideas. So, welcome, Tomoko. Maybe just a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. When I was 7 years old, I was ill. I stayed in the hospital about half a year. At that time, many people folded with paper of wrapped medicine. Now the medicine is the capsule. At that time, no, it is wrapped by paper. So everybody folding something. So I learned to the lilies. That is my first origami. So after that, I back to my home. My father bought me Akira Yoshizawa's book, and I learned by myself. That is my starting point.
Thank you, Tomoko. Paul Jackson has long been associated with the BOS. He's actually one of the people I first met when I started origami in his flat in London. Originally from the UK, he was the magazine editor for the Society between 82 and 86. He subsequently moved to Israel and married Miri Golan, and they now jointly run the Origami the Israeli Origami Center. Paul, perhaps a little about yourself. Thank you.
Hi. Well, first, I'm very honored and flattered to be here, so thank you to the people who organized me to come. I feel very privileged to be here. Yes, I started as a boy, the usual story. I joined the BOS in my late teens. I went to art school, and I was creating simple models, and my professor here in the art school asked to see my origami, so I put my little yellow elephant and purple giraffe on the table, and he looked at them and knocked them on the floor. And I knew then I was going to be an origami artist, because it was naughty, it was unacceptable. You could do the craziest, wildest things in the art school, and I was doing them, but somehow folding paper was naughty, and I had to stop it. So that was my motivation to be an origami artist.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Giang. Thank you, Tomoko. Thank you, Giang. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Giang. 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 Thank you, Giang Now Robert Lang, and Robert Lang is recognised as the world's foremost origami designers. His name is synonymous with the modern advances in technical origami, both as art and in maths and science underlying the art. His book, Origami Design Secrets, is considered a key reference work for aspiring creators. He's recently collaborated with sculptor Kevin Box to make large-scale sculptures based as origami, and is an OUSA board member. He's a great ambassador for origami. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. So, as seems to be the tradition, I too started at about the age 6. Found some instructions in a craft book for some traditional designs, and that got me hooked. So I'd fold those designs over and over. The thing I loved about origami was that I needed nothing more than a sheet of paper, and if I messed up, I could always just take another sheet and try it again. So that was what hooked me. By my early teens, I discovered Harbin's Secrets of Origami, which threw the doors wide open, and it's been a lifelong passion ever since.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. So through these questions, I'd like to sort of get to know our great creators. Some of the greatest creators in the origami world are here today, so that's fantastic. And I'd like to open with maybe some discussion about your design philosophy and what leads you to create something, or when you consider a model is finished. So could you each give us some idea of what is the characteristic of a good model? What's something you're particularly proud of? Is there a design style you favour? Can you explain things you consider in the creative process? Has it always been the case, or has this process changed over time? I'll start with Paul.
About 20 years ago, Florence Tempko wrote me a letter in the days that people would write letters rather than send emails or emojis. And she said something that I've always remembered, and I think it's very deep and very wise. Because I'm an artist. In my soul, I'm an artist. I've done a lot of design work and writing and teaching, but right at the bottom of me is some kind of artist. And she said that origami would become art when people stopped asking how and started asking why. I need to think about that. And that's kind of been the philosophy of what I've done for the past 20 or 30 years, to try to push the edges of the art a little bit further out. So yesterday morning, Robert said something very beautiful about let 1,000 flowers bloom, and he's quite right. So my flower is this pushing of the edges, sometimes over the edge into unacceptable areas, or areas that are controversial, areas that don't work, but to try to expand origami into art, into fine art, into some kind of context that's not just, oh, how do you make that? As much as I love that, but also, why did you do it? What's this about? What does it relate to and refer to more in a fine art context? So my history has been not just about making models that I can teach, which I love to do, but it's about pushing the edges of the art out.
Jan. Thank you, Paul. Sorry.
Hi. My father is a painter, so I also paint and draw a lot when I was a little kid. And I study architecture. So I always see things in 3D, in spatial. So when I start origami, and I also love reading and a lot of books about art, but especially I love Zen art, and I love haiku. So I always love like simple stuff, simplicity, but it's not like simple and boring, but simple, but have something behind it. There's some story behind it. So I get, to me, just less is more. So that's what I like to achieve with my design, simple and elegant. And besides designing like just origami, just like animal, I like to design origami that also has story behind it, just like my mother and child series and the Buddha mask, and talk about circle of life. So to me, it's more like it has some depth to it.
Thank you, Jan. Sure. Maybe Robert.
I like a lot of different genres, and I think the underlying motivation continues to be novelty, the idea of doing something new and different. So I jump around. I will do insects or birds, figurative, but then try something geometric, purely abstract. And the common theme that makes all of those genres appealing is doing something new. And I think it's actually very closely related to what Paul phrased as pushing the envelope, trying to find the limits. And as he said, sometimes you go over the edge and end up in the abyss. But it was a fun journey all the way down. And so different designs, I'm motivated by different things. For figurative work, I'm usually trying to capture the emotional appeal in the subject to have that re-expressed in the folded paper. For geometric, it's often to illustrate a mathematical concept, but to do so in a way that's aesthetically pleasing and beautiful, and many other reasons in between.
Thank you, Robert. Maybe Tomoko.
No philosophy is my philosophy. Anyway, can fold just by hand is my philosophy. And always finding something new and surprised. Surprise is my big emotion. So I continue to origami. So every time origami show me some new world. So that is my, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Tomoko. So thank you. Each of you, as the great origami artists that you are well known in the origami world and achieved a great deal. Maybe you could talk through maybe one or two of the highlights or things that you recall as great memories that have happened to you on your origami journey, whether the creation of a model or an event you took part in, or today, or any sort of... That's a cue. Robert, maybe yourself. Just one or two items.
I'm going to just pick one out that's very recent, which is, and I apologize in advance, it's mathematical. But I've been very interested in rigid folding, things that are foldable from materials that don't bend, like wood and metal and plastic and the like. And earlier this year, it's almost woke up in the middle of the night with an idea about how to approach designing a whole family of rigid folds. And so I worked out the math, and it worked. And I was able to then create some patterns and score some wood, and it worked, and they folded, and they were beautiful, and you could see some of them in the exhibition. And I'm going to borrow a phrase from Eric Demain, which is, when you make a mathematical discovery for this brief moment, you know something new that's a universal truth, and no one else in the universe knows it at that moment. And there's a high in that moment, and you want more of those moments. So that was a really satisfying thing. And it ended up being both a technical paper and some beautiful artwork, which is like, what more could you ask for?
Thank you, Robert. Let me send it, Paul. Let me send it your way.
Yes, I think there have been many highlights. It's difficult to choose, but I think the most significant one was many years ago, I think in the middle 80s, when I was teaching students of design, beginning to teach, and one of them said to me, "You teach us all these quite complicated ideas. What can you do with just one or two folds?" So in my great wisdom, I said nothing. Just fold in half, make a book fold, make a diagonal, so what? But then I began to think about it, and from that discovered this world of the one crease, where you fold almost nothing sometimes, and the paper begins to bend and fold and contort. And somehow that was, in many ways, the opposite of what I was doing by making models of animals or cubes or something. And I found something new in that was very exciting for me, and very meaningful, that I'm still exploring. As minimal as it is, I feel that it's endless. So by finding something so very different to what I thought, what I'd been brought up to know as origami, then I felt that this was somehow mine and, you know, significant to me. And even 30 years later, that still resonates.
Thank you, Paul. Maybe Tomoko.
My highlight is sitting here. Yes, indeed, because I attend the 25th anniversary BOS convention too. So already past 25 years. Still, I love origami, and still I live in origami world. That's my best highlight.
Thank you.
To me, I only feel very happy and calm when I fold. So I get to me that the achievement, I think, because not that I don't know what happened out there, like the trend and all this stuff, but I only do what makes me happy without caring about the trend and what happened out there. I got the second thing that I want to say that it's not about myself, but I think at the beginning of the Vietnam origami group, it's a very young group in Vietnam, so I helped them at the beginning a lot and try to write about like copyright, wet folding, introduce like exhibition and all those things to them. And I'm very happy that they really grow and some of them become like well known today. And that makes me feel happy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We now had an idea. What we quite like sometimes is the guests to talk about the models that they've created. And there's a difficulty here for doing that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to talk about one of the models in your display.
Well, I got no for my figure, but I think maybe I'll talk about my penguin then. Because I think my penguin is one of my favorite designs, even a very simple, only 4 folds. At the time I designed the penguin, I just play with the paper. I know that there are many penguins out there. I try to do something new and something different, and I'm happy to come up with that penguin. Very simple and 3D, and I did not bring the variation here, but the penguin with a few steps, it can turn into a dog. You add another piece of paper and can turn into a bird, and the penguin can also turn into a Santa Claus. So I hope that I can show some of that in the class today.
Thank you very much. Your work is very stylized and has a great look about it. Maybe you could tell us about one of the beautiful objects from your display.
Okay, the cone, like a napkin, hat of napkin. Even if a geometrical model sometimes show me a very human-like. When I make a cone, the top should become a little bit curved. So it's a very charming point of the geometrical model. So that is my best.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I'm going to talk about 2 very closely related models you can find in the middle of the display on a little wooden stand, 2 cicadas. And one of them is actually a reverse engineering of Yoshizawa's cicada design. He never published instructions, but a few years ago, some photographs and step folds of that became available. Laura Rosenberg had them, shared those, and from those images and some others is able to reverse engineer that design that he did in 1959 and see how it was decades ahead of what anyone else was doing at that time, which was amazing. But that piece then inspired me to go back and look at one of my old designs that I had done maybe in the 1980s, but that was just horrible, clunky, and thick legs and ugly. But I said, there's some basic structure there, and if I come back to that design, it's 2 decades old, but apply the last 2 decades of what I've learned about how to do insects and folding from thin, strong paper and bases and so forth, maybe I can rescue that design. And it worked out. In fact, it's I think it's my favorite of the several cicadas I've designed over the years. And yet it's based on very old 80s level structure. So I've called it classical cicada, because it's a cicada sort of folded in an almost classical style. But I'm very fond of it, and I think it echoes and was inspired by the decades earlier work of the great Yoshizawa.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. So thanks, Paul. A lot of your work is quite minimal, involving a few folds, but very beautifully executed. Do you want to tell us a story about your display?
It's a very diverse display. My most recent work is with images. About 20 years ago, I came to the realization that in my work, and perhaps generally the problem, or perhaps the issue of origami is not form, but surface. That it's possible to create almost anything by folding, but what is the surface? How do we create a surface? Is it paper? Is it perhaps wood? Or what is that surface? So the recent work I've been doing has been with a printed surface, where I've taken photographs of my hands, for example. So you'll see two pieces there. There's one of the palm and there's one of the back of my hand, where by folding and by cutting, sorry everybody, very sorry. By folding and cutting, I've made the digital surface two-sided. So it hangs in space like a flag, and you can see the two sides. So by doing this, it rather disrupts the image of the hand and creates a rather strange sort of surface. Also, they're very big. They're not hand-sized, they're 60 or 70 centimeters square. So I've done a lot of work recently with digital prints. And also there's a little, perhaps, joke there about digital. Yes? That digit means finger. So digital media just means finger media. If you literally translate it. So I like that little joke there in the words. But for me, by using a printed surface, it gives me a whole new set of challenges that I don't get by using paper or something that's given to me as a surface, because I have to somehow create my own. And that's quite a problem in many ways, but I enjoy that challenge.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. So, thanks for those great answers. We're also here, and you're giving us a series of classes over the 3 days that you're here. We are midway through the convention, but maybe you'd tell us about the next class you'll be teaching and what people can expect. Let me, Paul, sorry, back to you straight away on the back of that.
Well, actually, I've done my 2 classes. So the next time is in here tomorrow morning. I think I'm giving a talk about my students' work. I've done a lot of teaching in art and design colleges for 35 years now. So I'm going to show some of the work that they have created by folding. So I start with them by working in paper, and then they work later in fabric or metal or plastic or wood or ceramic or paper. And I'll show some of that work and talk about how I teach and the results I get from the students, not just the work, but other things as well that I hope they learn from their time with me. So that's here tomorrow morning.
Thank you. And Giang, what can we expect from, what's coming up from you in the next couple of days?
Today I will teach, today and tomorrow I teach it got simple, I get it, most of those can be dry fold. But the same with most of my model. Some of them can be dry fold, but if you can wet fold it, you will achieve a much greater result. Yesterday, the cat, I think it's always a big mess when I try to teach wet folding. But I think people do enjoy it, I hope. At least they get the structure and they can go home, practice, and everybody will end up with different cat, a different result.
Thank you, Giang. And Tomoko, what's coming up from you?
Okay. In my class, I always thinking the same feelings that I achieved the models, the students share the same feeling. The first time that I built up that model. So always share the same feeling
Thank you. And Robert?
Well, a bit later this afternoon, I'll be teaching a longhorn skull. So it's very popular in the American Southwest for people to decorate Western styles by hanging skulls on the wall. And there's a shortage of skulls, so now we can fold our own and put them up, and that's what I'll be teaching.
Thank you very much. Do join the class if you haven't done so already. They're here for, and they'll also be in the breakout rooms, so please make the most of their time with us. So thank you. The next question looks about, the British Origami Society is celebrating its 50th year, and it's the anniversary. So 50 years, since 1967, we had an Origami Society. And certainly in Britain, we've seen many changes in origami, how it's developed. I'd like to think, I mean, certainly the four of you have been part of a movement to make origami more accessible, pushing forward boundaries in different areas, and you've all had a contribution as part of that change. So thanks on behalf of the origami world for that. But maybe at this junction and an anniversary time, what do you think will change in origami in the next 50 years, given what we've seen today? Tomoko?
I cannot imagine. Always a good model, everybody cannot imagine. The good model happened always suddenly, always new. Anyway, the key was in hand of children. The most important thing is many children enjoy origami. So the future of origami will be something new and enjoyable, surprised origami will come, I think. So most important is the child. Please ask the children.
Paul?
I think the only way that I can answer that is to think back to 1967. Can you imagine what the people, I mean, what would they think if they saw us here now, 50 years later? I mean, it's an extraordinary thought, isn't it? That the flowering of origami in that 50 years has been incredible, really. And I feel very privileged to have lived through that time. When I started to fold paper, it was almost silly. You know, why is a man folding a piece of paper? Why would you do that? But now it's a profession, it's engineering, it's design, it's science, it's mathematics, it's education, it's therapy, it's a hobby, it's all kinds of things that perhaps we could not have imagined 50 years ago. It's been a very remarkable time to see this beautiful art and science flower so much and so quickly. And so many wonderful people involved from so many diverse cultures and races and creeds around the world. It's an extraordinary thing. And 50 years from now, I've no idea, but hopefully what I can't imagine, this flowering will continue. So 50 years from now, there are people sat here or sat somewhere, maybe some of us, that can remember this time and how we could not imagine that time.
Giang.
To me, I think people still keep pushing the boundary in different directions. And I can see that, I hope that in the next 10 or 20 years that you can see origami in museum, just like treated like real fine art. And of course, like many applications in the real world, like what Robert talked about, I think. And people will explore different material rather than paper, I guess.
Thank you, Giang. Robert.
I think I'm going to paraphrase Paul, because I think the similar thing. When I've looked back, the things we're doing today, many of them are unimaginable 20 years ago. But the things we were doing 20 years ago were unimaginable 10, 15 years before that, and so on, all the way back into the middle of the 20th century. So I don't think our tiny little imaginations of today can can guess what's going to be out there other than just a broad statement of more genres, more varieties, newer materials, newer techniques for making folds, for newer techniques for coming up with new designs. And if we have a time machine that we could look forward into the future, I'm quite sure we would see some of what's being done. Some of it will say, that's very familiar. And some of it will say, that's impossible. That's not real origami. But it will be.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. So thank you very much. You've given us a bit of background and we've asked various questions. I don't know if we have any questions from you. We're here for a...
Hello. My name is Peter. I've had a question in my mind that's been there for quite some time when I was a little boy. I'll be as brief as I can. And it's to do with design and engineering solutions being beautiful. And is it... I know what my opinion of that is and why. I've just wondered what your opinion is, because more often than not, a design solution, when something needs to be done, the example I think of is the aeroplane Concorde, is a beautiful thing, but it had to be that shape to perform its function, to fly at twice the speed of sound. That was the engineering solution, this beautiful dart. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about the solutions in origami being beautiful, because that was it was necessary from an engineering point of view for it to be so. Do you understand what I mean? I'm sorry if I didn't articulate it very well.
Let's try.
My almost first professional job many years ago, early 80s, was working for Siemens in Germany, who are an engineering electronic company. And I did some folding workshops with their designers, and they were amazed and excited by the possibilities of folding. And I did some design work with them. And then they said, thank you, that was very interesting, but bye-bye. We love it, but bye-bye. We cannot work with you. What? But you loved it. You were very excited by what we were doing, by the possibilities of folding. And they said to me something very interesting that I think is now beginning to happen, that they could not manufacture things that were folded. They could only make things by fabricating, which perhaps is a kind of folding, but they could not make anything in an origami way. They were not tooled to do that. And I think it's now changing, that people are beginning to use this language of folding, the aesthetics of folding, to make things. And we've seen examples from Robert, and there are others in design as well, in furniture, in jewelry, in fashion, and so on, that were perhaps not technically possible 30, 40 years ago, but which are becoming possible now because of new materials, because of digital technologies and AutoCAD and so on. So I think that manufacturing is changing, and that origami is one of the ways that the changes and the developments can be realized by folding sheet materials, or by fabricating, by putting together sheet materials in this aesthetic of origami. And the attraction of that is that it's minimal, that things can be done simply and logically, and there's an inherent beauty in that. That there's a logicality and a beauty by folding. And you ask a small child this is one of the reasons they love origami, I think, that it's just so cool and clever. And this also translates into higher manufacturing ideals as well, and engineering and so on. That I think we're coming into an era where origami technology is possible, which perhaps was not possible a generation ago. So I think this will pull all the beauty and all the other things you were talking about along with it, and it'll change how things look. Already things are changing, I think.
Anyone else like to answer? Oh, Robert.
Yeah. So for many years I worked in the world of engineering, and there's a concept in engineering, and especially mathematics, called elegance, which is this notion that the solution is not just meets the requirements laid out in a spec sheet, but that it's minimal, that doesn't have anything extra. Every bit is used, and it's used in a clever way. Minimal was one of the terms Paul used. And this is an aesthetic quality, but it is a quality associated with the best engineers. And indeed, in almost any field, the best engineers are artists. They produce artistically beautiful work. And I think the concept that ties it together is this notion of elegance. And so even non-engineers perceive the elegance, and we see it as beautiful, but it actually has a functional value in the engineering, and that's why we see it there.
And it's that sort of Occam's razor that the simplest solution is usually the right one.
Yes, he just said it's Occam's razor, the simplest solution is often the best, and I think that captures the notion.
Any thoughts? Okay. Any other? Oh, Jan, sorry.
I got to add some small thing that it happened me to decide when the model is done, but one thing that I know when it's done, when I cannot take away anything from it.
Thank you. It's Mark Brayfield. I was interested in Robert Lang's comments about being inspired by Yoshizawa and the cicada design. My question is this. You're all wonderful origami designers. Do you enjoy folding the designs of other folders? Do you avoid them? Are you inspired by them? Or are you just not engaged by them once you get so involved with your own designs?
Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't fold other people's designers much, mostly because I've got so much ideas of my own that I want to pursue. But when I do have a chance, I love folding Montrol's designs. They are elegant. I mean, the designs are elegant. The finished appearance is almost incidental. I just love how they're put together and the flow of creating them. So that's one that I really like.
When I was much younger, I folded anything and everything, whatever style, whoever the creator was. I would just fold and fold and fold. I wasn't so interested to create, but I think as time has passed, I want to create. Yes, I have the same problem. I have too many ideas, too many things in my head I want to make. And I feel that I've absorbed what I need to absorb. You know, you absorb and you forget what you don't need. I'm a believer in that you take in a lot of information and what's important sticks and what's not important just flushes out. And that's a process I think I've gone through sometime over the past 40 years or so. So now I want to focus on my own work because I feel I have enough in my head to really occupy me. Do you fold other people's work, Tomoko?
Same as you. Now I am getting old, and when I was young, I fold many new models, but now I have no time to fold all. So I fold by my eye. Open the book and watch something interested. I folding a little. But amount of time I spend by myself. So now my interest is not only origami. The other things, the other music or paint or something influenced me. But still I fold very far from standing point. For example, folding character. For some character is very fun. So origami world is so huge. So I folding for relax.
Yeah, I think pretty much the same for me. I start folding a lot of other people's work at the very early beginning, but not much lately. And even for model by Akira Yoshizawa, which a lot of people think that he really influenced me. And actually, I don't really follow a lot of his model at all, only maybe one or two. But what I would like to say that I learned a lot, or you can learn a lot by just looking at the finished model and look at the picture, not only from his stuff, but whatever happened today. So I enjoy looking, new model, and whenever I see a new idea and the thing I really like it and appreciate it. And there's certain things that I learned by just looking at the model itself, without even folding it.
Thank you, Jan.
Obviously, 50 years ago, you didn't know quite what directions things were going to go in, and at the moment, it looks like there's so many different types and ways and directions that origami can go in, and obviously, I'm pushing on the fabric side, as are quite a few other people here. And I was just wondering how everybody feels about that, because coming from the quilting world, I've had a lot of hostility from people because I'm pushing the edges of the quilting world and not doing what a lot of people expect to be done in that, and quite a lot of hostility for that, which I haven't so far felt in the origami world. But I'm just interested in how far people like the sort of collaboration between different fields rather than keeping origami. You know, we joke about origami only being purist if it's not cut, you know, and it's an issue in fabric origami that sometimes we sew, and for some people I think that's probably a problem, but you have to do that, so particularly in soft origami rather than rigid origami.
Okay.
Some years ago I felt a kind of like a guerrilla artist, you know, under the radar, folding paper, nobody was interested, and I was working with designers and other artists in other materials and so on, but I was kind of hidden and perhaps rather derided sometimes as well, because it was just a bit of folded paper, you know, dragons and little birds and things. But as time has passed, what I've noticed is that it's becoming respectable to fold paper, and I'm a little disappointed in that. Well, mixed feelings, because you become visible, you become part of the establishment, and I think origami and folding, I make a distinction, I'll talk about this tomorrow, but I make a distinction between origami and folding, that I think that origami is the engine room, it's where all the new ideas happen and they come from. The folding is the adaptation of those into other materials and other contexts, and I think that from my experience anyway, that Louise, you just keep plugging away. You keep doing what you do, and if you keep showing up and turning up and smiling and being there and not getting upset if somebody doesn't like you, but you keep showing your work and you do it, eventually they take you seriously. Because they can see that you are serious. If you take other people's opinions as the opinions you should be having, then I think you will fail. You have to believe in what you do, and you have to keep plugging away and being confident about your own voice and your own way of doing things. And this is my tip and advice to people who sometimes see the door closing. Just keep hammering at it, and eventually it opens. We found this, Miriam, myself, with Origametry, the program, that for many years people would not take it very seriously. But as we built it and developed it, people began to listen, and they took us seriously. And it's the same with my work and my art, and also with my teaching as well. That if you keep showing up, if you keep doing the work, then eventually all the doors open.
How can you picture an image in your head and then suddenly transfer it into a sheet of paper?
Thank you, Freddie. For now, the golden nuggets. The question, how do you guys do it? How do you explain your creative process? You have 5 minutes to explain the secrets to origami.
Okay, the secrets of designing origami. How would I describe? It would probably take me about 780 pages of writing to answer that. Fortunately, I have.
Find the book.
There's a book. But that is, it's not the only way to design, but it is a way to design. So Origami Design Secrets is at least worth taking a peek at.
Okay, yes, my way is I play, I doodle. I don't have an idea in my head where I'm going, what I want to create, what I want to do. I play with the paper, and 90-something% of the time, nothing happens. It's silly, nothing happens, I throw it away. But occasionally, you find something. Occasionally. What it is, you never know, and you never know when it will come, when it will happen. I create by doodling, but with concentration. And from that, things evolve and happen. And what I found over the years is if I do that, I find things that I wouldn't expect, things I wasn't looking for. But you need to be aware of what you're not looking for. This is the trick. And it's just very hard to explain, but it's how my head works. I just play and doodle and things happen.
Tomoko. Thank you, Paul.
I am not thinking in my head. I am thinking by hand. So just fold, error, and trial and error. And suddenly to the accidental founding. So anytime origami show me a right way. So until origami show me, I try and error. Yeah.
Thank you, Giang.
To me, I think I also play with paper, and most of the time I don't really have an idea in my mind. I just play with the piece of paper until something comes out. I see something. But I get the other thing that I like to say that sometimes you see things or you read and you listen to things and you like something that sticks in your head for a very, very long time, and suddenly someday it just come out. So I get maybe it unconsciously. I mean, it's still back there, but sometimes it come out. And also, I get for the youngster, I think you just need to learn the basic technique. And I design my first model, or at least I start designing by modify other people's models. Sometimes I fold the model in the book and I forgot, and I start to play with it. I forgot how to fold it and just start making things up. For a little bit more experienced folder, I think I always talk to the youngster in the Vietnam origami group that at a certain point when you know all the basic technique, and at some point you need to forget the technique and start feel more. That way you can design model with feeling rather than just forget the technique. Just start feel more, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, now you know. We've got 6 months to the next convention, and we're expecting great things from these lessons. So thank you very much. I think that hopefully that's given us a bit of introduction to our guests. They'll be presenting class throughout the convention. I'll be available in the breakout room. Just say one more time, thank you, Giang, Dinh, Tomoko Foods, Paul Jackson, Robert Lang. Thank you very much.